and welcome to the Fundamentals of Lute Playing. My name is Laudon Schuett, and today we're going to be talking about your second ornament, what we call the fall. If you haven't seen my previous video on the shake, the first ornament that I introduced, go back and check that one out. This won't be a super long video today. We're just going to talk about what this ornament is and how you can introduce it into your playing and interpret it if you see it in your pieces that you're working on. So if you are somebody with a musical background, you've had music theory training, in particular classical music theory training, the fall is essentially an appositora. It's essentially an appositora. It's a little less defined than the appositora because you can come from multiple directions. It can be half step, it can be whole step. But if you're grasping for what do we call this thing in a modern sense, it's essentially an appositora. Now, the shake was indicated by basically a hashtag mark, or like a sharp sign in the score. For the fall, the most common symbols that I see are a little X or a little cross. Now, I am including in the description a link to a handout on this. I understand that this may be a little hard, especially for absolute beginners to understand. And again, if it's too much, if it's over your head, skip it. You don't need to do ornaments right now, but this is for people who want to start adding ornaments into their playing. If you're a beginner and this is just too much, wait. Give yourself some time to get more comfortable and come back to this. A couple things that we'll talk about. Now, in order to do this ornament, like the shake, the ornament is with a single pluck. So I will demonstrate. If I were to take 3 notes, you saw 3 notes written on the page. We're going to do an F, a G, and then an A flat. And they're all written. So on the page, F, G, A flat. You'll notice I'm using the real names of the notes instead of the tablature letters. In general, that's the way I approach it, but if you wanted to know, D on the second string, open A or G, and then B on your first course. So D, A, B, like that. The actual notes being F, G, A flat. Also known as G sharp, depending on the context. Because we're in F, I'm sort of thinking of it as A flat. So let's say I wanted to add a fall on the last note. The way I would add the fall on the last note is I would play the F, then I would play the G, and then I would strike the G again, and then hammer on to the A flat. So I'm only striking once. I'm hitting once with my right hand, and then I'm using my left hand to finish it by hammering down. And if you're an absolute beginner, this may be something that you need to practice. So we'll do this again. And the speed of it is going to depend on the character of the piece. Let's say you're doing some sort of lugubrious, sad piece. You might do something like that. But if it's a dance, you might do something like that. It's really fun to do things like where you have these falls. So they can be fast, they can be slow. It's going to depend on the character of the music. You wouldn't necessarily want to play a slow piece unless you felt that was appropriate in that section. So the amount of time the ornament takes up is going to be sort of dependent on the character that you're trying to create. Now, the ornament is also on the beat. So that means if I count this, 1, 2, 3, or 3, 4, 1. So it's right on the beat. I'm not trying to go 3, 4, and 1. So the hammer-on is actually happening after the beat. It's the pluck that lands on the beat. That's maybe the easiest way to think about it. Now, you can also have a descending version of this. Let's say I go C, B flat, A. And let's put the ornament on the A. So we're going to go like this. And you'll notice in both cases, all I'm doing is I'm taking the note before the note that has the ornament. So originally it was F, G, G, A flat. And I'm restriking that note and then hammering on, or in this case, pulling off. So in this case, it's C, B flat, and I hit B flat again and pull off to the A. This is really, really a beautiful ornament. And for those of you who are more experienced musicians with some background, you'll notice that both examples I gave, the notes were prepared. Prepared just means that I struck the note that was used previously to make it. So in this case, it was F, G. So that's our preparation. And then I strike the G again and then hammer on to the A flat. In this case, it was the B flat, C, B flat, A, right? Or let's say it's lively. Something like that. Or let's say it's lugubrious. So those are prepared, and you'll see that very commonly at cadences and things like that. So for example, you might have a G chord with a B on top, and then I strike a C chord with the B still on top. We'll tune those later. The weather has been wonky in Nashville, so. Just have to forgive a little bit of flavor with the tuning. The peg doesn't keep slipping. There we go. So we play our G chord with the B on top, and then the C chord, and then hammer on. It's really beautiful. And that type of variant on the fall for the French would be called the pour du voix, and it's a fall. So a couple things to talk about in addition to just sort of the basics of this. The falls don't actually have to be prepared. So if you're used to Baroque music and you think, oh, an appoggiatura needs to be prepared, it actually doesn't have to be. You could have a situation where you go. So there I went E to F, even though I never had hit the E before. So falls do not have to be prepared, though I'd say 9 times out of 10 you get situations like where it's absolutely prepared. But like the opening of a piece, you could play that. Now it's Philip's Pavan, which I recently released. I switched out, played around with some different ornaments in the opening. Some people go with a shake, and I decided, it'd be really nice to do a fall. Now, so it does not have to be prepared. The most common places you'll see them, let's say you're playing a piece in C major, is you'll see them most often on the 1 chords and the 4 chords. So in this case it would be like C major and then F major. And you'll see them often right on the sort of tonic of the chord. So going to C or going to F. Now, that's not to say that's the only place you'll see them. You'll see them all over the place, and they can be whole step. I could have done something like this. It's totally appropriate. I could have done something like this, ascending. So it can be whole step, it can be half step. What I have noticed is that the unprepared ones, the ones that come out of nowhere, tend to be a half step, and they're usually the half step from below. And I don't want to say that it's never done any other way, because I could see something like that. But what I've mostly seen is that. So that's the most common thing that I've seen, is that it's from below and it's unprepared and it's a half step. But it can be a half step, it can be a whole step. So just like the shake, it's a very flexible ornament. It is a single strike with the right hand. and then a hammer-on or pull-off with the left hand. And if you're struggling with hammer-ons and pull-offs, I'm going to do a video shortly coming up on sort of some exercises and help. For those of you who've played classical guitar, you've probably done plenty of work on those, but everyone else might need a little bit of help. If you are struggling, you can start off by trying to always use strong fingers, so 1 and 2, and then working on developing things like 4 and 2, and then things like 4 and 3, which is really beautiful. So you could do something like that. In terms of some other variants on the fall, we don't know. They could have filled the gap. So, for example, if you have something like, maybe they did something like, so G. We just don't know. I suspect that they would do that. You could fill a third like that. So G to B flat, and then what I'm doing is I'm striking the G again, and doing a double hammer on up to B flat. So that might be more advanced. The other thing I've noticed too in some of the like dance music is I think that they probably were also doing falls of greater intervals than a second, sort of a half step or a whole step. So for example, you could get something like, or I think that works really well in some of the Scottish hunting tunes that I've seen, where you might have some, yeah. I think that adds a great effect, and it reminds me a lot of sort of the bagpipe ornaments that you see. So I think that this ornament is actually very, very flexible, perhaps more flexible than I hear lute players always using it. So again, I've included a little cheat sheet in the description because I know it's sometimes nice to have it written out. So I've put it in standard as well as in I put it in standard and then in Lute tab so that you can kind of see how it would work out. And I hope that clarifies some things. If anyone has any questions, please put a comment in there. I know sometimes this stuff can be a little complicated, or more complicated than I think it is when they're first working on it. Again, I've been doing this for a while, so it's just sort of like, oh yeah, you just play the note that came previously. It's sort of like this. Oh, that's so easy. What's so hard? But it might not be very, very clear. So I'm going to try to make that clear in the description, in the link in the description to the little document that I'm giving you. But if you have any additional questions, please don't be shy. Put them in the comment section. If you're enjoying the channel so far, just remember the best way to support it is to subscribe. I've also got a Patreon if you want to support in that way, but otherwise, happy practicing, and if you're up for it, enjoy putting some of these falls into your music, and have a great week. Bye-bye.